Welcome to all of you for the health of it. Allison and I are a group that we have going here in Michigan. And as part of my doTERRA team, we have Kim West here today to talk about pelvic health. I had done Aging Gracefully, I think it was bone health or something back a couple, 3 months ago. And we asked people what else they wanted to hear about. And pelvic health made it to the top of the list. Can we hear more about that? So reached out to Kim, who has some expertise there. So bringing people from all over the world here to Michigan and all over to educate us. So so glad all of you are. Oh, look at that little peanut. I am so sorry. I got distracted by that baby.
So did I.
Yeah, exactly. Hello. So we're all glad that you're here, glad that you took the time on this Sunday evening or Monday, depending on where you're at in this big old world. But thankful that you all are here and taking the time to learn about a subject that is so important to women, to men also, but they probably talk about it less than women do. So I am going to turn it over to the rock star Kim and let her introduce herself, talk about her expertise and training in this area, and take it away. Glad to have you. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks, Wendy. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to have you all here. And hey, there's Jeff. Yay. See more and more people showing up. How you got New York City, we've got New Zealand. This is so cool. LA. So pelvic floor health is something that I think a lot of you may be interested in, just because it's something that we're not taught. It's something that Wendy had just mentioned, maybe women talk about it more than men, but I even think women maybe don't. Because it's just not something that we're really taught to know about and understand in our bodies. By the way, if anybody has questions as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat, and Wendy will be checking the chat box for me because I'm pretty terrible at keeping track of that, and I'll be sharing my screen for a little bit. So she can kind of interrupt me if you have a burning question. So I thought for today, we've got a mix of people here, probably from all backgrounds, ages, lifestyles, and but I know that everyone here is wanting to be or already is empowered in their health, being a part of Wendy and Allison's yoga health coaching group. And then some of the women I know here from my Pilates days, they know a lot of this about pelvic floor health as well. So what I'm wanting to bring today is just sort of an overview and holistic view of pelvic floor health, and a little bit of the mechanics of how it works, but really just show you how there's actually a lot of different ways that you can approach taking care of your pelvic floor, and that it's a bio-individual experience. It's your own experience. So a little bit about me first, so you kind of know where I'm coming from. My name is Kim West, and I'm from California originally. I've always been a mover and a dancer, loved dancing since I was young. Went through a pretty big health ordeal in my teens. I had ulcerative colitis pretty severely. Had my colon removed when I was 22. So from 14 to 22, I was on steroids and had a pretty tough time. After my colon was removed, I had a little bit of a second chance at life, and really just figuring out, how does my body heal? And that's been really the last 20 years on this holistic health pathway for myself, which has led me to my current life and career in movement and holistic health. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've got some of that information on here. Oh, Allison, can you enable me to share my screen? And so while she's doing that, I'll just say a little bit more. So I ran a dance company, and I lived in Seattle and got my dance degree once my health started to improve. In my 30s, I ran a dance company in New York City, and that's where I really got into studying more around functional movement and anatomy. And I had to have a second abdominal surgery in my 30s, and I really attribute a lot of the education I received in New York for being able to prepare and heal for that abdominal surgery really, really well, to the point where my surgeon actually asked me to start a program at New York Presbyterian Hospital to help patients recover from abdominal surgery, which is so important, is something that we're not taught. So let me see if I can share my screen. Perfect. So I'm going to share.
Kim, I also made you host, so you just may see someone popping into the waiting room. If you could just admit them.
Ah, cool. All right, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is me. Body Moxie is what I call everything I do. I love the word Moxie because it reminds us that we have this inner strength and power and agency to change our lives. At this stage in my life, I'm doing a lot more in the way of holistic health coaching. I specialize in gut health, as you might imagine from my background, and I always include quite a bit of movement into my offerings, whether that be customized Pilates or other forms of functional movement. Somatics also, and yoga. And that's my website and my contact details if you want to get hold of me. So my philosophy is that we become healthy when we feel empowered. And I've had this happen over and over personally, where it almost doesn't matter what I do as long as it's my choice, I have learned. You know, Western medicine totally has its place, and I'm very grateful that it's helped me in certain areas of my life, and it's also disempowered me in certain areas of my life. So really learning to have that discernment and knowing when it's really up to us to take ownership. And when we know when that is, and when we know more about ourselves and support each other in community, we can make those choices that are more aligned for our body, our mind, and spirit. And I really believe that we know our body better than the experts. It's great to listen and take what we want, but I do not feel at all that there's a formula that works for everybody. So in my job in coaching is to remind people of that. I think we all need the reminders, myself included, that we have this innate knowledge. We tend to look outside ourselves for answers, right? And so what my work is working to do is to give you a few things to chew on, some tools to try, and then you figure out, that exercise, that doesn't really resonate with me, but this breathing exercise, I really felt something happen. Okay, great, that's your one. There's not one thing for everyone. So it's finding your unique path to healing. Okay, so here we get to the basics of how the pelvic floor comes into play. So the pelvic floor is a part of, you could say, these four other areas, one of four areas of the body that create our inner unit of core support. So you look at this photo, or this diagram, the diaphragm on top, right? And the pelvic floor at the bottom, creating this really beautiful cylindrical support for the body. So the diaphragm is this dome-shaped, I'm just gonna check, oh, sorry. There were people that might have been waiting. Okay, I just admitted them. So that's a dome-shaped breathing muscle that forms the top of the abdominal wall. So there's another image I'll show you later, but basically when our lungs fill with air, the diaphragm contracts down, the pelvic floor releases down. And when we exhale, the pelvic floor lifts up, the diaphragm lifts up because we don't have as much intra-abdominal pressure because the lungs have become smaller on the exhale. I'll talk more about that a bit later. So there's the diaphragm, really important component of core support, postural support, pelvic floor. Then we have our transverse abdominis. We call this TVA. So this is the deepest layer of abdominals that wraps horizontally around you like a corset, even in the back of your body. And so this kind of draws everything together. And this is the part of the body that we really work to rehab after pregnancy, to really create that support for the woman's body after she's given birth. Then we have the multifidi, which are these tiny little muscles along the spine, really important to bring together this inner unit of support, and then the pelvic floor. So you can think of it as a hammock here. at the base of the pelvis. So it is really important in stabilizing the spine and the pelvis. If you figure if this is not very strong, it's going to be easy for these bones to kind of fall out of place. But if the midline is clearly supported right here, you're less likely to have issues like sciatica and all of that, because your midline, your center is clearly connected. So the pelvic floor helps, of course, it's necessary for elimination, for giving birth to children, and for supporting our organs against gravity. So as human beings, we have very strong pelvic floors relative to, say, a four-legged mammal, where the gravity is not going straight down through their pelvic floor that way, right? So the organs are going down this way through gravity, and the pelvic floor is there to support mostly the bowel, the bladder, the uterus. We want to create that support, and we can have prolapse if that's not strong enough. And of course, sexual function has to do with the health of the pelvic floor. So I want to talk about this first before I get into the specifics of pelvic floor toning and health, because this is really, really important. You can do pelvic floor exercises all day, but if you've got something going on in your whole body that's inhibiting your alignment to be less than ideal, then your pelvic floor is simply not going to function the way it could. So no movement is isolated. Every area, every movement or area of tension is reflected somewhere else in the body via lines of pull. So this guy in his onesie is a good example of this. So say there's an injury or a scar of some sort right here where he's getting that pull. Where is he feeling it? He might be feeling it right here in his adductors, right? Which also affects his pelvic floor. He might be feeling tightness in the shoulder. So he keeps doing all these exercises for the shoulder, and he tries to, create strength through here, but really this needs to release. Okay, so that just gives you an idea that we tend to forget that we're one organism, right? My pelvis isn't over there on the other side of the room. It's attached to my body. So whatever happens on the top is going to be reflected in the bottom. The other thing that is, I think, a misconception with the pelvic floor, if you go to like exercise classes or like tighten your core and like Kegels, like lift it up. It's like, if your pelvic floor is chronically tight, it's just as dysfunctional as one that's chronically loose or slack. So a muscle or any muscle in your body or any fascial group needs to be able to engage fully and release fully to be at its best. So a tight muscle doesn't mean it's strong. Think of like upper traps that often get tight, right? They're not functional. They're causing issues throughout the rest of the body because they're holding and they're trying to hold your skeleton into a shape so your body isn't going all over the place. So fascia is something that there's a lot more focus on these days, which is wonderful because we're not just like separate muscles, but we are this 3D web of fascial connections, and it's really important not just for our postural support and health of our body, but our immune system, wound healing, hydration. You can kind of think of our bones like floating in a sea of fascia, right? And we're mostly water. And so we tend to forget that and think of like bones, especially if we feel tight and we feel rigid. But really, the soft tissue of our body is determining what our posture is. And when we move our body from a holistic perspective, right, not just like, I'm going to do this one thing for my arm or bicep or this one thing for my core, but no, let the whole body breathe and move. Then we're building elasticity into the fascial network. And we're building that buoyancy and that strength, that flexibility and strength balance. So good thing to note that the fascia needs hydration. And by hydration, I don't just mean drinking water, although that's very important, but movement. So you can think of aging as just a process of drying. So the more that you move, the more that you are hydrating the fascia. It doesn't matter really what you're doing, as long as it's something that involves your whole body and something you enjoy, because then you're going to do it in a more functional way for your body because you're happy. We'll get into that with jaw tightness. So yeah, movement, movement, movement. Here are just some images to give you some ideas on, oh, there's Deanna, on how posture, how you can kind of visualize how posture is yeah, just mute her. How if your posture is misaligned, it would affect your pelvic floor. So here we have ideal alignment. So this line would be like a central channel of energy running evenly out through the crown of the head, down through the center of the feet, right? So if somebody has exaggerated curves, right, they're going to have, look how far forward the head is from that line on all of these actually, right? And there's like, you can't do the chicken or the egg, what started it all, right? It's like our life is full of experiences, and we fell when we were 2, and then we became left-handed, and this happened and that happened. So your fascia builds all these patterns throughout your life. But once you kind of have an overall picture, oh, right, like you look at this alignment can, or even like maybe this last one sway back, and you can see this with men sometimes, where their pelvis is tucked, but the pelvis is like kind of pushed forward. And then there has to be compensations through the rest of the body to keep the body standing up, right? So once we learn where our pelvis can be, which is more here, more neutral, then the pelvic floor will be able to function normally. In this first one, it's being pushed forward. So you might think of this as like someone who has an interior tilt, meaning they're kind of sticking their butt out, that kind of like exaggerated lumbar curve. So that's going to create some tightness in the pelvic floor. Like it's going to be taut like a trampoline, not very functional. They're probably likely tight in their jaw too. And then if you go to someone here who's tucked the other way, tucking the tail under, the pelvic floor will be actually kind of slack. I wrote it here like a hammock, right? So neutral alignment and easeful breathing, that's important, creates buoyancy in the pelvic floor. Tucking the pelvis under, I'll just demonstrate if you didn't get what I'm saying. Neutral, here's my tuck under. If I'm living like this all the time, my pelvic floor is slack. If I'm tight this way, anterior tilt, it's tight. And you'll notice if you do those pelvic movements and then try to engage your pelvic floor, you'll feel the front end of your pelvic floor or the back end of your pelvic floor engage differently. Okay, so you don't have to know what yours are, but it's just good to kind of understand like it's about the whole body, right? I love Eric Franklin's images. So you can see here that to have this buoyant alignment, see how this arrow is going down? There's grounding through the lower body, but there's lifting through the upper body, right? So there's energy channeling down, there's energy channeling up. So if we get too focused on pelvic floor, we won't necessarily achieve the best support that we could. Okay, and then I'll get into a little bit of specifics of the pelvic floor. We won't go into all the muscles, but you can see we're supposed to have a strong pelvic floor because there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of muscular support and all these muscles attached to fascia, right? And so the flexibility of the hips right here is gonna be reflected in the health of the pelvic floor. Remember, nothing is isolated. Here's another Franklin image, right? If there's some prolapse, then the pelvic floor is kind of slack this way, and here's a more happy pelvic floor with a smiley sacrum. So we talked about this, the function of the pelvic floor, but yeah, it's a blend of muscles and fascia that support the abdominal cavity, especially the bowel bladder and the uterus. Our pelvic floor health is influenced by our postural habits. Jaw and pelvis we'll talk about in a minute here. Breathing patterns, the gait, the way you walk, and your hip socket mobility. Okay, So this next part I want to talk about is the diaphragms of the body. So if you think about your whole body from your feet to your head, we have these, and I'll just kind of draw with my mouse. Sorry that I don't have a better way to show this. But like if I start this skeleton guy, if I go over his ankles here, this arch of his feet, right? This side horizontal arch, there's a little diaphragm there. So we've got the diaphragm of our organ diaphragm, right? Our breathing muscle that we talked about. But the diaphragm is like creating a horizontal line of energy through the body. So you could say there's other diaphragms in the body, not just the one that's the breathing muscle, right? So the first one, and there's different theories on this, but this is sort of the ones that I resonate with. So the transverse arch here, right? If we've got like overly flat feet, or we're collapsed, or we're tired, and there's not much spring in our step, you could say, then that diaphragm is going to be a bit collapsed, and we're not going to have that kind of upward energy and downward energy even as we move through life. If we've got some sort of injury, or something going on through the lower leg or the feet. You could even say the knee joints are one, but I'll go right to the pelvic floor is a diaphragm, right? We saw on the photo of the top of the abdominals, the bottom of the abdominals wall. So the pelvic floor is this horizontal cross section of support for the body right around here, right? Then we have the thoracic diaphragm, which is the one we spoke about, the breathing muscle in here. It looks like a jellyfish kind of doming here. You could say there's one in the throat. The one I really like to talk about is the soft palate at the back roof of your mouth, right? So if you, let's all do this for a moment. So if you're seated, if you could just sit nice and comfortable and tall, right up on your sits bones. So if you're on a couch, maybe come to the edge of your couch. And take a moment and you might just close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Slow breath out. And feel the back of your head and your tail align. Notice what happens if you shifted. Back of your head and the tailbone align. Visualize the diaphragm of the pelvic floor. Don't have to do anything, just visualize that horizontal hammock. Coming up to the actual breathing diaphragm in your thoracic, in your rib cage. And then coming up through the throat and visualizing the soft palate. So if you let your tongue come up to the roof of your mouth, so it's not too close to your teeth. So your tongue maybe falls back just a little bit. Did you notice anything happen, like possibly your chin lowered just a touch, or you feel a little bit more space, a clearer pathway between your head and your heart, or your head and your diaphragm? So just keep the tongue falling back there. And see if you can visualize behind the eyes, in the back top part of your mouth, a widening. Feel your head just floating on top of your spine. And stay here. I'm going to lead you through a very brief breath exercise. So I want you to inhale from the back of your head. This might sound or feel weird or different, but imagine tracing your breath from the back of your head down your spine, in the back of your diaphragm, down to your kidneys, and then down to your belly, right into your pelvic bowl. That's your inhale. And then you exhale from the belly, from the pelvic bowl. You trace the breath up through the front of the body, front of the spine, up through the throat, soft palate, up and out through the crown of the head towards the sky. I'm going to say that again. So we inhale from the top of the head down through the soft palate, down through the back of the spine, kidneys, inhale into the pelvic bowl. Exhale from the pelvic bowl, trace the breath up through the front of the spine and out through the crown of the head. Do that a couple more times on your own. So essentially the inhale is traveling down into your body, the exhale is traveling up and out through the top of your body. You're allowing the breath to move freely. And after you complete that last one, just open up your eyes and kind of sway your body. And before I go on talking, does anyone want to say anything, ask any questions about where we're at so far? Comments about how that felt?
Hi, Kim. I have a comment I would love to share. I've never done an exercise like that before, and I loved it. And I actually, like when I was doing it, I actually felt like I was in an elevator. I actually had the sensation of movement, like internal. I don't really know how to explain it, but I actually felt like movement going up and down like an elevator.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and there is actually a pelvic floor exercise called the elevator exercise, so you're right on it. And that's the feeling, is that it's internal, right? I think we kind of visualize our breath being like just here because that's where we see movement happen. But really understanding that our breath is way more than our lungs expanding. It connects with so much more. And if you're, it's great sometimes. There's a time and a place to do strong breathing, and I will do a strong breath practice later where we're really using, like making audible breaths. But there's a lot of value in the quiet, more internal energy breath, right? So it's more energy than it is breath, even though of course it's breath, but you're tuning in and allowing your body to have more space and better communication through that central channel. Great, thanks Suzanne for sharing that. Does anyone else want to share? And you don't have to, I just wanted to give anyone a chance to if they wanted to share or ask anything. So I also included on here the energy locks in yoga, the bandhas, because this is really like kind of providing the same concept. So in yoga, the Mula Bandha would be the pelvic floor. And these other bandhas are around really these energy centers. The Jalandhara bandha is behind the throat, but really, and when traditionally this practice is done, you're lowering the chin a little bit more exaggerated than I would do, but it is kind of opening up the back of the head and neck, which, we're often hear, right? So we're actually locking this off. So when this is open, our pelvic floor responds. There is a bone in the body called the sphenoid. It's super cool. And I've studied craniosacral therapy, and you can actually like feel it move on someone. It's so cool. So it's like a bone that's shaped like a bat or a butterfly. It actually looks like the pelvis, and it's behind the eyes, and it floats within the membrane. And so it will be it will mirror what's going on in the pelvis, right? It's the same. So if we've got tension up here, just thinking tension or jaw tension or whatever, there will be a response, physical response in the body that will be reflected in the pelvic floor too. And this is the deep front line. So some of the anatomy nerds here in the call will know what I'm talking about. Tom Myers is this expert on the fascial lines of the body. So the deep front line would be the one that includes the pelvic floor. This is a line of fascia that can actually be dissected out of a body intact, right? This is another example of we are not separate, parts. So it starts under the soles of the feet, goes and through the medial part of the lower leg, adductors, inner thighs, pelvic floor, psoas, all through the middle of the body, and then up and over through the top of the head. So just showing you that like when one thing is off, it will be reflected somewhere else. Okay, and this is really amazing. So I was talking about the jaw. So if you look at these images of the vocal cords and the pelvic floor, you'll see a lot of resemblance. I'll just talk a little bit and you can look at those images. So when we were embryos and there was like these two, I won't explain this super well, but my understanding is like when we're being created in the womb, there's like these two depressions, and one becomes one end, the mouth end, and the other becomes the pelvic floor. And so they kind of happen at the same time and grow out of each other. And that's why, like, if you look back at our evolution, before humans were talking, the voice box and the act of sound was really energy as a way to, let's say, bear down, right? To give birth, like that primal, those actions that we have to do in life that are primal, like giving birth, comes from this mechanism in our body to create that force. Later we developed sound, and then we started, having language. But really it's coming from this place of energetic connection to the pelvis. So we can think of this in all different ways. If you're stressed or you're angry, this happens to me. I've been grinding my teeth since I was like 2 years old. So a lot of us who grind our teeth will have tight pelvic floors. So again, just understanding that your treatment could be a lot of facial stuff to release your pelvic floor. It could be actual pelvic floor exercises. It could be massage. Like, it really depends on the person's bio-individuality. But I just wanted to show this image to remind us that the mirror reflection is potent. Really kind of cool. Okay, and here I will go over, if anyone needs this image, breathing and how the pelvic floor is involved. So sometimes we think of inhale, lift the pelvic floor. If you have tried to do Kegels or something and you thought, I'm going to inhale and lift my pelvic floor because inhale feels like this. But let's look at these images. So I inhale and the lungs expand for the air to fit, right? So the diaphragm is contracting down and getting out of the way to allow space for the lungs. The intra-abdominal pressure increases. The pelvic floor relaxes and widens. Remember, every muscle needs to completely relax and widens. Then the exhale happens. The pelvic floor and the transverse abdominals draw in and up. A diaphragm lifts up easily. The air pushes out. The lungs get smaller. Right? So in that way, we can use the exhale to assist and create power behind a pelvic floor lift. So we have a clear, like, that's the pelvic floor lifting. Now that's the pelvic floor widening and relaxing. I tend to think of it that way. Pelvic floor it narrows as it lifts. And then I inhale, it widens and opens. And we'll do that exercise in a bit. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of how it all works together. This is why tightening the core Q is maybe not so helpful. I remember I had this workshop with someone who's like, I think she was a reflexologist and a somatics person, and she's like, we just need to leave our body alone. we're like doers, you know, in Western culture. We're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go my pelvic floor, and I'm gonna do that. And it's like, just leave your body alone. It already knows what to do. It's been evolving for millions of years. So simply inhale and exhale fully. And both your TVA, that's your abdominals, and your pelvic floor will function fine. Leave it alone. So breathing, we hold our breath, right? So on the left, this would be breathing easefully. On the exhale, the pelvic floor comes up, the abdominals come in from both sides. Holding our breath, we might be kind of holding the stomach in on like a core exercise, but we might be pushing our pelvic floor down when it really wants to go up. It's like we're stopping it from doing that because we're holding our breath. Makes sense. And so this comes back to my ideas on the bio-individual approach. So why treat the pelvic floor? Why be aware of it? Why talk about it? First of all, we don't honor this space of creation, of sensuality, of our goddess power, right? So I'm just like, I was in the woods last week at this detox retreat, and I was like barefoot walking around, and I started feeling like really sensual. I was like, yeah, I'm a fairy in the woods. And I noticed my hips started going like this instead of like this. You know, I was allowing my hips to move, and that's our default, and we just forgot. So simple little things can actually heal the pelvic floor, and really just embodying that feminine part of ourselves. And when we ignore this area, we're missing out on a lot. And creation is not just making babies, but projects, passions. This is where the energy lies. So if we're you know, inhibiting this area, blocking it in some way, there's a lot we're missing out on. I don't know where that green line came from. Okay, and then to increase blood flow, to heal tears, traumas, or weakness, obviously childbirth is trauma, right? So there needs to be preparation for childbirth and restoration time, which I know in a few countries like France, they spend a lot of time with women postpartum. It's not something that's done in America or here either, I don't think. But it's something that really deserves so much more attention. Or just weakness. If there's some kind of weakness from an injury or just misalignment in the body, the pelvic floor, that attention can make a difference in your whole body. And you want to prevent dysfunction from pelvic floor weakness, or prevent surgeries from pelvic floor problems. It's not uncommon for women to have surgeries for incontinence or prolapsed organs. And for some women, it can be successful, and that's great, or they insert mesh. But there's definitely so much potential for healing this without a surgery. One of my teachers worked with her 80-something-year-old grandmother to repair her pelvic floor to avoid surgery. So it's not rocket science, and it's not hard work. It's more subtle, like the energy that Suzanne talked about. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. We're going to do some exercises together. Before we do that, does anyone want to ask any questions about what we talked about? What I'm going to go through is everyday tips, ways you can treat your pelvic floor post-surgery, sound healing, breath work, and core exercises. I'm going to do all that. But if you have questions about what we just talked about, go ahead and chime in. Okay, I'll keep going. So I'm going to demonstrate a few things, and some stuff I'll like get on the floor. You don't have to do that, but if you feel like you want to do that, you totally can. I'll first just talk about some everyday tips. So one is If you feel like you really want to work on your pelvic floor and this is something you want to explore, definitely do your best to commit to at least 5 minutes every morning. It might end up being 20 minutes eventually, but 2 to 5 minutes each morning with something. It could be the exercise that we just did together earlier, where remember the breath is starting in the back of the body, traveling down, coming up through the front of the body, traveling out. If that feels really foreign to you right now, don't worry, it will get better. If you feel like you're reverse breathing the opposite way, don't worry. It's very normal, very common, and easily fixable just with some practice. And by the way, like, the reverse breathing is not necessarily wrong. In fact, I try to like change up my breathing all different ways because I think it's great for our body. But to really honor what our body wants to do, the exhale, the pelvic floor wants to lift. Squatting is one of the best things you can do, just squatting, right? So if you have trouble with your knees, just use a couch, right? You don't have to go deep. So if I'm here and I'm just doing a sit to stand, right? A sit to stand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about squatting. So if you feel like trying squats with me, you can join me. So what you're going to do with your squat is just have a pretty good distance between your legs, a nice wide squat. When you breathe, you're going to breathe in to prepare. You're going to exhale to stand up. Exhale to stand. Inhale, widen the pelvic floor. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Inhale, widen. Exhale, lift. Inhale, widen, right? That same concept. Next thing I want you to think about is when you stand up, weight into your heels. Inhale, sit. Exhale, weight into the heels. Inhale, sit. Exhale, weight into the heels. Now, if you're doing just a normal squat without a couch, right? So I'm thinking a little bit of weight into my heels, because if I don't, I want to go like this every time I stand up. Pelvis forward. Yeah, pelvis forward. No. I'm going to go weight into my heels. So I stop myself from going forward like that. Right? I also want to think wide sits bones. If my back is overly arched here, then I might tuck the tail under a little bit, but I don't want to be over tucked like that. So right, just like I'm sitting into a chair. If you have the ability to do something like malasana in yoga, that's amazing, but hanging out in it isn't necessarily the best. So you want to keep moving. So you could come down to malasana, right, into that deep, deep squat here and stay for a bit. But then I would actually try coming in and out of it. This is amazing for your pelvic floor, right? I'm fully expanding and I'm lifting up from my inner thighs and from my pelvic floor to stand back up, right? Simple, functional. If your knees allow, it will keep them healthy and keep your body. It's great for your back. It's great for your hips. Another thing I want to mention is sitting on the toilet. So really what's ideal is if we can squat over the toilet. So obviously I don't think any of us want to stand on our toilet, but if you get some like little stools, a stool of some sort or some blocks or something. So say for example, this is my toilet and I have like something that brings my knees up this high. It is such less, like both legs, right? So I'm on the toilet like this and my feet are supported with something. There's not that strain to push stuff out. So much better for the pelvic floor health. You're not straining, you're just allowing. It's like the thing with women having a baby lying on their back, like that makes no sense, you know? So it's just so much more work, right? So to squat and allow the anatomy to function in such a way that gravity is assisting elimination rather than you fighting against it. If you sit quite often, if you're at a computer, try to sit on a ball, a physio ball, those big balls, and just move your hips around and try to also change your focus. So here I'm looking at you guys. Here I would look outside the window, preferably at some nice trees, at something really far away so that my eyes change their focus for a minute or so. And here I can feel my head more easily falls back versus when I'm looking at a screen, I'm more likely to have my head forward. The head's like 8 to 10 pounds. So it's a lot of weight for the cervical spine to manage. So you want to bring it back. You also want to think of widening your eye sockets. So with the jaw, you can bring your hands, right below your ears. And of course, you'll easily feel the tender spot if you have tenderness. So you can massage in a circular motion. And it's not just that, yes, it does relieve these muscles, but it also reminds you, right, I don't need to lock this. And then if you hold at the tender point and sort of pull down a little bit and let your chin drop down a little bit. Yeah, nice, Wendy. You might feel the back of the head move back in space aligned with your tailbone. And then you can open and close your jaw with your hands there. Tapping can be really helpful. I didn't believe this until later, not because of the not because I thought it was woohoo fairy stuff or something, but because it just didn't seem like enough pressure. I was like, I need pressure, but I've actually learned that tapping is super helpful. It's helped me a lot. So if you tap along the jawline, just lightly tap up and down. And then if you go to the temples, you can go over the brow line as well. Cheekbones. So there are a lot of muscles in the face. And think about it, we use our face so much to express ourselves. You can go around your mouth. And if you know about gua sha, Maggie and our doTERRA team, she's a holistic esthetician. She's amazing. And she's taught me so much about gua sha with the tool. And it's changed my life, and it really opens up your lymph. So on the either side of your nose is a pressure point. So you can at first kind of run your finger up and down there. Just loosen up some of that tension. And then again, you can just tap there gently. Tapping around the eyes, and then you can come to the forehead. I'm going a little bit quick, but and then you can go anywhere on the skull is super helpful. This is also helpful for your lymphatic drainage. So I like to tap on either side of my spine, so I get a little bit stronger when I get to the back of my neck because it's a bit tougher muscles there. And then you can really do anywhere along the skull. And you can look at the, there's reflexology charts that will show you the meridians. But just doing it wherever it feels good is awesome. And the last thing is if you put your hands just below your collarbones and tap along the collarbones. This is also helpful for emotional stuff. Just tapping here and tapping onto your sternum. That's just in front of your thymus gland, which is stimulating for your immune system. Remember, everything's attached. Okay, so getting into other treatments, and I'll get into surgery.
A couple of comments. So first of all, Andrea, good for you that you want to work on squats. And I asked, when you were doing your knees elevated, like you were sitting on the toilet, are you talking like a squatty potty? Is that what in essence?
No, like a normal toilet, but
yes.
That's something that to put under your feet.
Yeah, that's kind of what a squatty potty
does.
does.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
That little platform or whatever, stools, whatever. So
Exactly.
that's what you're,
Yeah.
so elevating the knees, right?
Yes. Anything
Okay.
that elevates your knees and brings the floor up higher. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then Jess had a question about the exercise you gave with squats and lifting the pelvic floor on the exhale, but that's different from what should happen naturally, she said. Is that correct?
So Jess, do you want to clarify that? Oh, shoot. The exercise you gave on squats was to lift the pelvic floor on the exhale, but that is different from what should happen naturally. No, not necessarily, because on your exhale, naturally the pelvic floor lifts.
Maybe I meant it the opposite way. I think
Okay.
that you were saying inhale when we stand and that the pelvic floor should come up. I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, it probably was because I was going a bit quick. So I'll just like clarify that. So inhale to sit and allow the pelvic floor to open. Exhale for the pelvic floor to lift as you're standing. Is that making sense? And inhale as you go down. Exhale as you stand up.
Okay. And naturally when we're breathing, when we inhale, like our, the pelvic floor is lifting.
No, when we're inhaling, the pelvic floor is actually dropping. So we're sitting and letting it drop on the inhale. And then as we exhale, it's lifting. This is a common thing to get confused about because it's like, it seems counterintuitive. Yeah.
Kim,
Uh-huh.
I just was going to say, you know, as a yoga teacher, we typically teach people to, you know, when you're lifting, it's an inhale. So as I was doing that exercise, I had to really close my eyes. And focus on that, because that is so. And I wanted to ask you, I know you're a Pilates instructor, and Pilates uses the opposite breath. Is that right?
Yes. And this crossed my mind and I forgot to mention it. So yeah, this comes up a lot. So the cueing typically in Pilates and yoga many times is opposite. And it's not that either is right or wrong, because it does say you're lifting your arms up in yoga and you're standing. It helps because you're bringing air into your lungs, right? So your lungs are expanding. So you're getting your arms out of the way. Like, it makes sense, right? But when you're exhaling and lowering your arms, you're also lifting your pelvic floor. Because if you weren't, you would go, you could just go, you know, and some people do that because they think, oh, the inhale is up and the exhale is down, so they collapse. But we're never all down or all up. We're always doing both. There's always an oppositional energies going in both directions. But it is confusing because the teachings in yoga, typically, traditionally in yoga and Pilates, appear opposite. But I would argue they're actually not. It's just to get in detail on the pelvic floor in a class, like, it's not really practical, you know? So don't worry so much about when you're inhaling, when you're exhaling. Let me just say this: whenever you choose to exhale, I don't care where it is or what kind of class you're doing, notice that your pelvic floor is lifting up. That's all you have to remember. So try this. Take a strong exhale, push, like, empty your lungs and push the air out. Do you feel how your belly draws in? Like, do a fake cough. It comes in. So the exhale naturally, anatomically, is drawing in and up. That's happening. So you don't have to get too caught up in like, oh my gosh, but this teacher said this in this class. Don't worry about it. You can follow the cues as they are, but you'll have that extra bit of refinement and awareness. Oh, when I'm exhaling and doing whatever movement I'm doing in my body, it can be anything. I'm doing a little drawing in of the tummy, a little lift of the pelvic floor, right? The pelvic floor doesn't feel like you're running a marathon, you know? These are slow twitch muscles. They aren't fast twitch like a quad that has to get you to, it's not a big muscle, right? They're smaller, slow twitch muscles. They're not meant to be super duper obvious. They're internal, just like what Suzanne says. So it's slowing down, tuning in a little bit when you're in a movement. And here's what my best advice: do a very long exhale. And when you exhale to the bottom of the breath, the pelvic floor will lift up. The transverse abdominals will draw in, the belly button will draw in. We often shorten the exhale. We're like so into the inhale, and then we're like, yeah. And then, but really, if you empty your lungs, see what happens, and notice how your body connects. So I would actually say, let's do this practice where we're gonna go 2 count inhale, 2 count hold, 4 count exhale, 4 count hold. Okay, so we're doubling up the exhale. All right, so find a comfortable seat, sit up nice and tall. When you inhale, don't think of it needing to be very big. Just think of it staying kind of low. So you might bring your hands on your ribs or even on your low belly. Inhale into your belly for 1, 2, hold your belly for 1, 2. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold the exhale out for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 1, 2. Hold the breath out for 2. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it out. Inhale to the belly. Hold it out. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding out for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, belly. Hold it out. It's a big Buddha belly. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale more than you think you can. Hold it out a little longer. Just gonna hold it out. Feel the pelvic floor lifting. Belly button drawing in, and then resume to a normal breath. So does this help clarify anything with the difference in the yoga and Pilates cueing? That it's a bit superficial with the cueing, don't worry about it. Just think long exhale, the pelvic floor will draw up when you exhale. Does that help?
It helps me, yeah. I just, for so many years, I've been saying, breathe in, engage your bandha, and then move. So
yeah, and it's not, you can engage your Mula Bandha on the inhale. It's not like sacrilegious or something. And in fact, like I was saying before, like I try to challenge myself to do different breathing all the time. I think it's really healthy to challenge the body in different ways. So remember, bio-individual, you're not gonna like break anything, but whatever you normally do, challenge yourself to do the opposite, because that's probably what you need,
Great lesson. Perfect.
I'll talk a little bit about surgery. So really what I did to prepare for my second abdominal surgery in my 30s was a lot of this breath work. And I didn't do a lot of hardcore muscle work. Like I didn't even do really planks or any of that. I did a lot of belly breathing. So what we just did, I let the belly expand a lot, and then I draw in a lot, right? Going to the extremes. So my belly had flexibility and adaptability, and it was more elastic. I tried to breathe low into my body, into my kidneys, into my belly, right? Low areas, and keep that slow exhale. Also, I needed it emotionally to calm my nerves. So slow exhales are amazing for that. The other thing I did to prepare was sound. Sound is incredibly, incredibly helpful. The vibration of your sound not only amplifies that energy, that internal energy flow from head to pelvis, but it helps strengthen the relationship between all the tissues. So humming, just singing, chanting. So let's do a couple of those. So we'll do a couple of ohms, and then we'll do humming after that. So what I'm going to, just for the sake of practice, I'm going to lead you guys through the first exercise where we trace the breath, but we're going to hum on the exhale. Okay. So take your comfortable seat, find a nice position for your feet, sitting up nice and tall. You might want to close your eyes, bring the back of your head in line with your tail. Feel your tongue fall back, and the tongue maybe to the behind the teeth or at the top of the roof of your mouth. Notice the soft palate widen and lift. Take a few slow breaths. Align your body. The is going to kind of sound like an ah, oh, mm. So we'll inhale all together. Down into the belly, exhale from the belly. Really go out through the crown of your head. Take a couple of normal breaths. So because I can't talk while I'm doing it, you might notice the vibration in your throat and head. Really feel the tracing coming up, out through the head, and really let it vibrate to reorganize that connection. We'll do it 2 more times without pausing. Inhale. From the belly, tracing up. Take a couple of natural breaths. If you haven't thought about it yet or felt it yet, for this last one, notice how the exhale draws the pelvic floor up, and it almost feels like you're holding in pee, right? You're actually lifting the vaginal wall, you're lifting the uterus ever so gently, okay? So we'll inhale all together. Keep exhaling for as long as you can. Return to natural breath. Okay, we're just gonna hum. So because you're muted, no one can hear you, you can be as loud and weird as you want. And you're gonna hum like kind of in your head, and everyone has their own frequency. Your body has a certain frequency that it likes to be at and it likes to heal at. So you can play, I'm gonna do it real weird so you can show how I try to figure out my frequency. So you can do the same. And so you go up and down to kind of figure out where your body is feeling like that's a sweet spot. And then you feel the vibration in your head, and you can get strong with it. If when in doubt, drop your chin a little bit so that soft palate has space, and then let the pelvic floor lift. Try not to think of bearing down, but just allow it to lift, okay? So here we go. Breathe in. You can get louder and softer. Keep going. Keep going because I can't hear you. So as you're going, find your sweet spot and stay with that frequency. . Exhale to the very end each time. Feel the vibration in your body. Notice where you feel it the most clearly. Where can you soften? Where are you tensing where you don't need to tense? If you soften in areas that could use some help, you'll receive more healing from your humming. So whenever you finish this last exhale, it'll be your last hum. And then you can kind of move your body around, move your head and neck. So that was something I used, humming. Not only did it stimulates your vagus nerve for de-stressing, it's amazing for your nervous system, but also because I was scared about my surgery, but it also was toning my pelvic floor, my abdominals in a really gentle, safe way. And then when I came out of surgery, I was just doing like the first exercise we did, just those really internal breaths and I could feel like, there was a moment where I was like, oh, good, my pelvic floor still works, because you've been cut, your abdominal wall has been cut. So you feel so invaded. And so just to feel that, like, yeah, it's just gently lifting. I'm not doing ab crunches. I'm not disturbing the healing that needs to happen with the fascia of my abdominal wall, but I was able to tone, and it was such a faster healing process because of that. And that was a surgery in my late 30s versus when I was 22, and I healed better when I was older because I had those tools. I'm going to go a little bit quicker here just because I know we're getting short on time. So things you can do if you've had, if you're recovering from a C-section or childbirth, besides all of this and the breath work, it's really all about that belly breathing, drawing in and out, the elasticity. There's oils you can use if you want to massage your perineum. You can use really nice ones are like rosehip and jojoba oil mixed in, diluted with essential oils like frankincense and lavender are extremely healing for that area of the body. Yeah, you just heavily dilute them so they're not overly strong. And I got a question before the class about fibroids and hysterectomies and that kind of thing. So, I mean, generally, again, it's bio-individual. It really depends on what your needs are. But I'll just give some general thoughts on that. So castor oil is extremely beneficial for the abdominal. I saw Wendy, you're doing a talk on that in our Rise and Thrive group. But yeah, castor oil is incredible. It penetrates down into the organs, and you can enhance that again with essential oils. So say it's fibroids because of hormonal imbalance. So essential oils that help with that are like basil, clary sage, again, frankincense, geranium, and then like helichrysum would be great because that's great for wound healing, would be helichrysum. If the fibroids you feel are more because of immune imbalances, lymphatic issues, you could go with, again, frankincense, but also like lemongrass and thyme. Those are very stimulating on the lymphatic system. But belly massaging is incredible. If you know of an Ayurvedic practitioner near you that can do body oil massage, that's incredibly healing. And where you can receive something targeted but gentle. There are pelvic floor specialists as well if you need something specific for your pelvic floor. For some people, the pelvic floor dysfunction is just because of that postural misalignment. So like going to a Rolfer, which is a form of body work called structural integration, where they're kind of like, opening up spaces in the diaphragm and the psoas that get tight so your body can be a bit more free. You can use a small, like the size of a tennis ball, but something really squishy and not nearly as hard as a tennis ball, something really squishy and soft, and just sit on top of it. So if you feel like you have a chronically tight pelvic floor, find a really squishy, like toy ball, the toy store or something. And, you know, in Pilates, we have these pinky balls. I even think they're too hard, but use that and gently sit on top of it and kind of roll around, and you'll know, like, okay, yep, there's some holding there, and take some time with it. You want to be gentle, and you can do the humming and the breathing when you find your spot, right? So you find your spot and then you do your humming and your breathing. Doing any kind of pelvic floor exercise like the lift. Let me just look at my notes here and see. Yeah, so if you did, yeah, time always goes so fast. If you did like a seated pelvic floor exercise, the one that we did where we were lifting on the exhale, right? If you do that on a squishy surface, a ball or a pillow, your body's going to be that much more aware. And you'll start to feel, it takes time, but you'll start to feel like one side of the pelvic floor is stronger than the other, or, you know, you'll start to learn about your body. Maybe we'll end, you can also do pelvic floor stretching. Really the best exercise is probably Happy Baby. And if that's too much, do like half one leg in Happy Baby, the other leg extended out long. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of glute strength. I mean, sometimes people have like a tight piriformis or whatever, and like that's just because their glutes are not firing. And it's just really simple, like the squats exercises or any kind of glute exercise. You don't have to do a lot, just enough to feel like I just engaged my glutes. So your body is like, thank you. And the piriformis will stop holding. Piriformis is a tiny muscle kind of under the glute that gets annoying and makes us feel really tight in our hips. So if you just get your glutes going in a real simple way, that's going to help your pelvic floor a lot. And I'll just repeat it because I know it's confusing. Exhale to lift the pelvic floor. Don't worry too much about, oh, I'm exhaling when I sit down or whatever. If you do the breath differently than how I did it, totally fine. Just remember, exhale, the pelvic floor will lift, whether you're in the squat or whether you're standing up, right? So try not to get too hung up on the movements and the breath matching. It doesn't matter. Just take a long exhale. Big belly breath, long exhale. The pelvic floor will lift up, especially if you extend the exhale. Okay, so we could end with a pelvic floor exercise, or I could take questions. We're kind of right at ending time. What do we want to do?
I have a question, Kim.
Yeah.
Hi. I sometimes notice that my voice gets weak, and I do notice that it's around menstruation. Oh, sorry. I just saw somebody said exercise rather than questions. I'll try
Okay.
to.
Whoever wants to stay on can stay on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed that my voice will be weaker around menstruating. And I wonder if it's connected to pelvic floor, and if you suggest more breathing and sort of softer or more sort of strengthening to counteract that.
Yeah, that's a really good question and a great observation. I actually notice differences in my voice too, depending on my cycle and depending on I did a detox and I noticed my voice really got affected. Yeah, so because our uterine wall is shedding and there is a lot of change, like I definitely think the pelvic floor changes its whole shape during our cycle and really throughout the month. So it would completely make sense, especially if you intuitively feel that's what it is. My sense about it would be, you know, everyone's different, but like for a lot of women, when they're actually in their moon cycle, it's an opportunity to turn inward. So when we think of strength work versus gentle work, sometimes the gentle work is the strength work, you know? So my feeling would be to do the slow, like, double up your exhale breath, you know? And then for you, because you're a body person, you might want to do, you know, inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 8 kind of thing. And really, really down regulate your nervous system and allow your body to really connect to that yin side. Because that's when our body has the capacity to have more energy for cellular repair.
Yeah.
So I would say go for the more gentle, anything that you know puts you in your parasympathetic, your rest and digest nervous system is going to be great. And really like the grounding exercises, anything that grounds you, but then bringing your body kind of low to the ground, and the humming or the you know, any kind of vibration is so great for that.
I kind of want to try that when I'm feeling that weakness in my voice and see if
Yeah,
it makes a difference. Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting. I mean, I always notice after I do it, my voice is like a little deeper, a little like grounded in my body rather than up here. After I do humming or any kind of sound work. So yeah, those would be my thoughts. That's a really great question.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll, does anyone else have a question they want to say now? And otherwise I'll go into an exercise to close. Okay. So again, finding a comfortable seat for yourself. Okay, so all the same setup that we did before. So you're going to feel the back of your head and your tail align. You're aware of your back body. There's maybe a slight drop of your chin. Maybe begin with tracing the breath like we did earlier. So beginning from the back of the head, tracing the breath down and through the middle of the body, all the way down into the pelvic bowl to inhale. Exhale from the pelvic bowl, tracing the breath up and out through the crown of the head. One more times in your own timing. Just as a way to center ourselves. Now, the next time that you come to the end of your inhale, so your belly's expanded, exhale to feel the belly button draw in, and imagine that you're lifting like a silk handkerchief up into your vagina. And you're holding it. And you're holding it there. Now, when you need to breathe, allow yourself to breathe. It doesn't have to be the big tracing breath, just a natural breath. And notice the pelvic floor might want to let go. That's okay. Try to keep holding it and keep lifting it, even though you're breathing. So it's like imagining there's like a seal at the bottom of your pelvis. So your breath might become a little more shallow or smaller. And now let it go. Relax the pelvic floor. Take a normal breath. We'll do the same thing again. Inhale to prepare into the belly. You breathe in. Exhale. Feel the handkerchief lifting up. You might feel like your sits bones get a bit more narrow. There's a drawing in, a connection of the midline. As you hold the pelvic floor, it might flicker in and out. It's totally fine. Just do your best to remind it to come back up. So you're building that endurance, which takes practice and time. Imagine you're in an elevator. We're coming to the elevator exercise, and you're on the bottom floor. And then the elevator lifts and the pelvic floor lifts you up to the second floor. So there's a little more strength and lift of the pelvic floor. Breathe here. Notice the chin relaxing, soft palate open. And then you're coming up to the third floor. So it's quite strong, the lift of the pelvic floor. Again, it might be flickering in and out, totally fine. It's finding its way. Come up to the fourth floor. This is the top of the building. So this is as strong as the pelvic floor can be right now today. Now to go back down, you're not just going to fall straight down. You're going down just as slow. So as you breathe, you come down to the third floor. So you only release a touch. Keep breathing, just natural breath. Come down to the second floor, letting go about 50% here. Down to the first floor, you're just about 25% engaged. And then you go down to the basement and you allow the pelvic floor to widen and completely relax. Beautiful. I didn't see anybody collapse their whole body when you relaxed your pelvic floor. And then just take a moment to take your arms up towards the ceiling. You might grab onto one elbow or wrist. Give yourself a nice side bend over. It's important to feel the whole body move. Come over the other way. Breathe. You might move the neck around. And again, breathe, turning the head. Whole body connected. One more time. Circling the head gently. Maybe your ribs move naturally along with that. Okay, so I'll close there for now. It definitely, yeah, Ariel just recommended the Franklin method balls. She's right. Those are really awesome, soft, squishy balls. I don't know why I forgot about that, that you can place under your pelvic floors. Franklin method. They have beautiful tools. I just forget about it because we have very little access to that stuff in New Zealand. And yeah, so I felt like I went a bit quick, but anyone's welcome to email me. Remember that it's really about your own experience, and I offer customized sessions with people around this kind of stuff. And as I work with people, I'll be able to tell, okay, they've got a rotation in their pelvis or whatever it might be. And so we focus on what your body needs so your pelvic floor can heal the way it needs to heal. Or I might say, you know what, maybe you need some body work, you know, or some essential oils. Like, it just depends on where you're at. So yeah, thank you ladies for the nice comments. And thank you for being here. Thank you so much for having me, Allison and Wendy. It was awesome to share this work that I'm so passionate about.
Well, it was great to have an expert in the room. So really appreciate your wisdom, and so glad, because when we asked our community, they were like, can you get an expert on that? And so I think we nailed it on this one. So thank you for joining us from all the way across, this big old world, right? So we appreciate everybody being here. You're going to be getting an email, and you'll have all the contact information for Allison, myself, for Kim. One of the things also, if anyone is interested, that Allison and I do are free 45-minute health strategy sessions, just to talk to you about where you're at on your wellness journey, if there's anything we can do to help you in movement on that journey as well. So all that information will be coming in that email this week, along with this link that we can all go back and do these exercises daily, right? So awesome. And thank you all for supporting us, for supporting Kim. It was great to see everybody on here. Did I forget anything, Kim or Allison, in closing?
No, That was fantastic, Kim. Thank you so much, really.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Allison. Thank you,
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks so
we
much,
appreciate
Pilates
you.
friends and Jess and everybody and Keely. Mwah, I love you guys. So cool to
Yeah.
see you all.
Yeah, great to have everybody here. Great turnout. So love how we're like exchanging and like all these like new people are coming into everybody's circles, right? Connection and community, connection and community. So
Yes, indeed.
awesome stuff.
We need it in 2020, right?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, we're reinventing what connection now, what fulfills us, right, with connection. So we're
Yeah.
learning what we need to do. So all right, great to see some new faces and some seasoned faces and those that we like to see keep reappearing. So check out our website, which Allison will have on our email. You can see some more upcoming courses and stuff. So if you guys have any special classes you'd like, let us know. We'll see what we can do to arrange that. So
Thank you.
much gratitude,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Thanks for
everyone. Thank you,
here.
Kim.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Bye. Oh, you're the host, Kim. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, everybody's leaving. Wait a minute, how'd this happen? Awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So, all right, awesome. And you're on vacation. Thank you. Thank you for
No,
doing
it's all
it while you're
good.
on
Like, and
vacation.
we're about to go take a big drive now. So yeah, it'll be great.
Awesome. You guys have fun. Be safe. Give my daughter a hug for me. And
I
again,
will.
you rocked it. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks for making it
Hey,
happen.
will I see you? Are you on tomorrow?
I should be on. I'm just going to see how things go with Wi-Fi and all that, but Allie's going to lead it. And so I just have the option. I mean, I want to come on, so I'm sure I'll be there. But if there's like great waves and we're at the beach, then I'll prioritize that. But otherwise, I will be there.
Awesome. Well, we forgot to stop recording, so
Oh yeah.
we're good. Well, nobody said that we